Hey guys, Michael Shainblum here with 5 quick tips for shooting self-portraits in nature. All right, my first tip is to get yourself a tripod and also a time-lapse timer release. Now the reason you might want a tripod is so that you can put your camera down into a certain position and then you can go out into the scene and not really worry about the camera. Sometimes it's fine to put the camera on rocks or the grass or something like that, but it's ideal to have a tripod and just be able to put the camera anywhere you want in any position that you want. And the time-lapse remote is great because if we do a self-portrait, we'll generally put the 10-second timer and then go out and run out into the scene and try and take a picture. Oftentimes you don't want to rush into a scene. You want to be able to take your time, and this is great because what you can do is you can set the camera to keep triggering pictures so that you can just take your time and it'll just keep taking pictures, and it'll take as many pictures as you want. Now these little devices are great. I think I bought this one for maybe $20 on Amazon. These remotes are great, and I definitely recommend picking one up if you plan on doing self-portraits. All right, tip number 2 is to try and keep your pose natural. A lot of times I'll use my time-lapse remote that we just talked about, and I'll set my timer to keep triggering pictures, let's say every 2 seconds, and then I'll just very slowly go out into the scene where I want to go. And I won't even go back to the camera. I'll wait and just let the camera take pictures, and I think the scene can become a little bit more natural if you just go out and enjoy the experience rather than just, rush out, try and take the picture and then come back. Tip number 3, try and use short shutter speeds when you're taking your self-portraits. If you can, there are certain limitations, like if you were shooting at night, you're obviously going to need a long exposure for that. But if you can do short exposures, I would do that because you don't want your figure or yourself looking blurry in the frame. And if you set it to a short exposure, you can go out and walk around and do different poses and know that the frames are going to be sharp every time. Now, again, if you're shooting these self-portraits at night, what you'll need to do is really go out there and stand in one place for, 10 to 20 seconds and just stand there and make sure that you've got your shot. And what I would do is keep standing there for way longer than the shutter the shutter's going for. Like if you have a shutter for 20 seconds, stand there for 40 seconds to a minute to make sure that one of those exposures is steady. Tip number 4, try shooting yourself as a silhouette, maybe silhouetted against the sun or a silhouette at night. I think it's really awesome when you look at an image which is a self-portrait or even just a portrait, and you can kind of put yourself into that photo. The person is small in the frame or they're kind of silhouetted, so you can't really tell who they are, and it kind of makes you feel like you could be that person experiencing that scene. And I think that's a really cool concept. I try and incorporate it into my own work. That's not to say you can't do self-portraits where you're large in the frame and you can tell, what shirt you're wearing and your hair or your hat or anything like that. You can still do those photos, but try one where you're far away. Try one where, the figure is just sort of there for scale and just to allow somebody to say, hey, that could be me standing there. Okay, my last tip here, tip number 5, just make sure that the person you're including in the self-portrait is adding to the composition. It's always a bummer when you go out and take a self-portrait and you see the person in the frame and it looks cool that the person is there, but the person isn't really adding anything to the frame. If anything, they're taking away from the composition. And, just make sure if you're in the scene, you're not like too far on the edge or of the frame, or like you're not too big in the frame and you're kind of blocking something in the frame. And, make sure you're in a proper scale. If you have this tiny little mountain in the background and you're taking up a ton of the frame, it'll look a little awkward. Just make sure you're compositionally aware of what you're doing when you're placing yourself in the frame, and know where you want to position yourself beforehand. All right, guys. So that was my 5 tips for shooting self-portraits in nature. I hope they help. If you have any comments or questions, just leave them for me and I'll try and answer as many as I can. And I really appreciate you guys watching, so thanks so much.